Hi, everyone, and welcome to the seminar session where we're looking at qualitative data analysis software and other related tools that you would use for analysis. So again, you hear this word QDA thrown around a lot. Those of you that work with me have heard about Max QDA. Basically, that's Max Qualitative Data Analysis and Software. So when you hear that term, that's really what's being talked about when we are thinking about it. Now, again, I love to go back to this model. It's important to remember that qualitative research is not linear, it's circular. So even though I'm going to be teaching the courses and often my seminars are taught in a linear fashion, that's only because that's the easiest way to frame it. But when you're actually doing qualitative research, it's really important to remember that there's a circle that you have to keep revisiting and recircling and re-going back to what you've done before to understand how you're going forward. So I always want to start that off by pointing out, even though this is a linear session, that this is not one piece or one stop looking at the qualitative data analysis or the analysis framework in the process. It's part of a larger process that requires a lot of rethinking, reanalyzing, revisiting, group discussions, and going back and reflecting that takes place. So in this session, we're really going to cover quite a bit in a really short time. And so hopefully this will give you a good, again, I always talk about these presentations are jumping off points. This is not going to give you everything. This is not definitive, but it's giving you the language, the beginning thought process, and basically a first step on the roadmap as you're moving forward for thinking about what kind of qualitative data analysis tools you want to use. I saw this on a Facebook group and I had to copy it because it drove me crazy. I was so annoyed when I saw this. But fortunately, I didn't put the two answers, but it speaks. But the person wrote, and this is not a critique of them. This is really shows about training. I'm doing my master's dissertation. I've done 15 in-depth interviews on Zoom. Now I don't know how to analyze the transcript, which was created automatically on Zoom. Any tips? In vivo or manually? Thanks. One, you should already have thought about how you're analyzing your data in advance because you can't pick your method, your methodology. All of that is going to guide your process of analysis. But the last piece is like, should I do it in vivo or manually? You should already know how to do it manually. And then when you choose the software, that should really be something that you're doing because it's a tool for how you're approaching things. Again, the software is not going to run your analysis. So like we use SPSR, when you plug it in and it pumps out the answer. The software is really an advanced organizational tool. You are the tool of analysis. You are doing the work around this. You have to set up your code books. You have to think it through. And the software is going to help you organize it. And again, the software's come a long way. I always like to tell my students, it's sort of think about the software as a fancy Excel, how you can organize data and organize how things look. Now it's even further than Excel, but even Excel is expanded. But you can't just go in and find something out by plugging it to Excel. Excel can do some calculations quantitatively, but it's better for organizing. You wouldn't use Excel to do your calculations. And that's sort of a quantitative way of thinking about qualitative data analysis software. So some things you want to think about is why should you learn how to do analysis without qualitative data analysis software? Why would it be useful to use QDA software? And what be the factors that would inform your decision about which one you choose? And that's kind of what we're thinking about. So going forward, you have to know how to do your software analysis without this, you have to know how to do your analysis, not necessarily software analysis. You have to know how to do your analysis without software, because the software is just going to help you conceptually think it through. And part of that is thinking through the old ways of doing things. And I kind of still do this one way of doing things old school is infinity mapping. And this is sort of an old school way of looking at the data. And it's very time consuming and resource consuming. And basically when you're looking at it, it's moving through your ideas. And this is an idea of how you're going forward with doing it. And basically, it's a wall full of sticky notes, you know, that you have your concepts and you write them, and then you move the sticky notes around for seeing what's happening and how you're thinking forward. So one of the ways that used to be done is a wall full of sticky notes with the observations and quotes, and you sort of then start moving things around. And it's really a broad way of looking things through. Now, I still kind of do this, but I use a whiteboard. There's a big whiteboard outside my office, and I start writing them down, which is a little bit easier than the sticky notes because you might change the code name or change how you're looking at it. But this is a really important way of knowing how to do data because this is how you're thinking it through instead of just sticking things in. It's also a great way for getting your team up to speed and together, because you have to be thinking about your team when you're thinking about your codes and getting people to think together and talk things through versus just putting things on a Google Doc. I'm not against Google Doc. I'm not against those things. But again, remember, qualitative is about conceptual and where you are with your positionality and talking things through. And so if you can be in a group, looking at things as a group and easily erasing and moving things around in the initial phase, that's really going to help you as you're going forward. So as much as we might think of affinity mapping with these sticky notes, so that's so old school, it is actually a good way, and I still do this when I do it, but again, I don't use the sticky notes. I use a whiteboard, and this is one of the ways of moving forward. And if anybody has done a World Cafe, and we talk about that in earlier sessions, this is, you could see the benefits of the World Cafe is a great way of getting people to talk, giving ideas, and getting things through. World Cafe kind of uses a sticky note framework, right? Or you write on the board. So you can kind of see the ways in which it works to help generate ideas and really look beyond to really sort of a quantitative or sort of deductive way of thinking things through. It helps you expand the ways you're looking at it. Now, building on this, there's also hand coding, and that's where you actually lay out, print out the transcripts, and you start going through things by hand. And this is, I know the generations now, everything's done online, so you don't even print things out anymore. But it's also another way conceptually to learn things, because with the highlighters, you can look at things and see where things are. It's almost the same as using the sticky notes, but this is more an individual level. So the one of ways, again, you can use the sticky notes like it's shown in the picture, but more often I would buy like 6 different highlighters and use that to highlight as you're going through what are the things to talk about. And by doing this, it helps you sort of understand what's popping out and letting you see things. And you could lay out the papers to see. Now, one way too, we talk about standards of evaluation. You can keep your audit trail together doing this by taking pictures of what's happening. And stepping back, you can do the same thing, the audit trail of taking pictures when you're doing it with the sticky notes, or if you're doing the big board again, where you do the dry erase board. So taking pictures is a great way of documenting things as you're going forward as well. But this is something that, again, when I'm first working with groups or people who are early in the qualitative phase, just to talk through, this is a great tool for getting started to just play around and get information together. Also, if you don't have access to the software, another great tool is just going in with Word and using Word or Google Docs. You can go directly into the transcripts and using the comment option, highlight what you're doing. And now Google Docs is widely available and free. So if you're working with someone who's in another country or who you can't meet with quickly, this is a great way, again, to start looking at how can we start looking at the initial transcripts to get some coding together. And by doing this, you can at least, when you're using the Word version, each person will pop up in a different color. You could see here. And you could put your comments in and see what people think about and how they're commenting. And again, this is an easy audit trail for the initial stages. Again, Google Docs are free and widely available, but you have to think about what are the IRB requirements around this, because you're putting the data that's in there. So that's something before you jump ahead. But usually if everybody on the team has been cleared by the IRB, and if everybody on the transcripts themselves are de-identified, this is a great way to still move forward. So here's an example of the Google Docs here, is that the example that's here is strategies of using policy to make changes in the school environment for food. And then we said yellow and green codes highlight perceptions of food priorities, and then they put their comments in the margin. So you can set up the color coding too, where you already kind of have your ideas of what the codes or the ideas that you're looking for are associated with specific colors. You could put that on an easy little document, and then people can go in and add their comments about what they think about those ideas. And this, again, is another great way of early starting thinking through how you're going to code your data and how you want to move forward with it. The other one, again, are spreadsheets. And again, this is using Excel, and they're powerful. And another way of sort of giving big pictures when you have a lot of data. So if you're doing qualitative content analysis, is probably one of the other options that are really useful to do. And it's the same idea as using the word. But again, what I want to stress is that you have to think about what are the IRB. And we use this in the classes when I'm starting off. So this is an example of when you're using content analysis, you have the open-ended survey questions, we have the person's idea, we have the, on the right, on the open-ended questions are on one side, then we have where we got the organization structure of where the person came from. So ID is a person's ID, the organization structure, this community-based organization or a college or a school district leader, and then the focus of the organization. So that's just more to understand the background of the participant that's being posted here. You might not have column, it's called E and F here, for example. But column I is the actual comments. And then what they did was you put the major things that you think were coming out, and people just put the numbers in the column that had more than one code, et cetera. And you just put them in here just to sort of see what's in there. Again, this is if you have, this would be more for content analysis or initial just thinking things through if you have a big group. These are ways of just generating ideas and being able to have a document to discuss what's going on. And also this, again, would be part of your audit trail of how you made decisions and how you thought things through. But let's move into the actual qualitative data analysis software, which is what everybody does. So when students are doing qualitative data analysis, and especially they haven't even taken a class, but they're like, I'm doing qualitative data analysis and I'm going to use NVivo. Okay, so what does that mean? I don't know. So you have to start thinking about what's the purpose and what's the utility of using the software, because if you don't even know that, then it's not even worthwhile doing it. And this also speaks to a lack of understanding and rigor about what's going on. So let's be clear about what qualitative data analysis software can do, QDA software. It can structure and organize. It can help you explore your data. It can help you annotate, so sort of summarize and see what's in there. Memos, you can keep track. So it's a great way of keeping track and developing an audit trail of memoing of what's taking place. This is where you can actually do your coding and retrieve and go back and do that circular process, which we talked earlier. And then it's a great way to visualize what's going on. In this software, there's so many tools now that you can see what's happening in your software. So there's the obvious where you see the transcripts and you can look at your codes, and you'll see that when we do the workshop on QDA software. But also you can now do things like word clouds. You can generate different types of mapping tools as well to see how things are connected. So it's a great tool for visualizing your data as you move forward through different stages. But what it doesn't do, and I think this is the piece that's important to think about, is it doesn't do the analytical thinking. It's not going to find your codes. If that's the case in doing quantitative, it's just calculating things. It doesn't do error-free auto coding. Now, there is a movement towards where it's beginning because of AI. It's looking for general ideas. But again, we're talking about people's conversations, and conversations are not linear. And even what people say isn't always what they mean. So you have to do the coding. It doesn't eliminate bias. So this is the other piece. And also, it does not do advanced quantitative analysis. So you could do, it's great for mixed methods, and that's probably something else it could help with. I should put under what it does do, but it does not do advanced and quantitative analysis, and that's important too. But there are a lot of benefits. You can do a lot of data. It gives you time to focus up on the analysis because it's really sort of doing this organization. You can use inter-rater reliability, which will help with your validity. And also, you can also check your audit trails. And again, the inter-rater reliability, those that work with me know that I am not tied to that because if you're trained in it, you don't need to do inter-rater reliability in the same way. But audiences, particularly the people who are coming from a quantitative background, they like to see that number. So this is one of the ways in which we do that. But again, it can impose these deterministic understandings, like telling you how things are happening, produce nonsensical findings. It also creates this pressure to do large data sets and use all these features that really aren't telling the story or relevance to the specific nuances about qualitative data sets. And then you have to learn a software. But let's talk about this a little bit more in detail, but looking at some of the philosophical critiques of QDA software. So one of them is that it frames knowledge. So when you're using software, again, because this is a strength that it's helping organize, but then this sort of linear sequential approach and following procedures really shifts the way in which you're thinking about data. And that's one of the concerns about qualitative research. Quantitative people just jump to this. So there's this sort of idea that it's really sort of separate the knowledge between we're counting on the software and what's popping out to say that this is fact, really then giving the knowledge and centering the researcher and the context in which the research took place as a space of fact. So this is one of the concerns about how we trust it as framing knowledge. And think about that like SPSS. I pumped the data in, this is what came out. People are really approaching QDA software, unfortunately, this way. And this is not a problem with the software, but about the field and how it's relying on this software, particularly people who don't do qualitative research or are just saying they do, but they're not really well trained in it, to look at it this way. The tools of the program as well is that it's really sort of making people have to fit their data into what the program can do. And again, it goes back to this procedural thinking and how we're structuring things and letting the computer program be central in the decision-making, in the critique, in the analysis process. So that's going to impact how data is being done. And so this is really important for thinking through about how the use of computer programs, if it's not just looked at as an organizational tool, it becomes viewed as the tool of analysis. Texturing of reality, too, is that this idea that it's really sort of shaping what is a fact and what is not fact. And as a result, things like thick interpretation is not taking place. It's sort of like this piece is here, this piece is here. And again, we talk about thick description and how important that is. Well, thick interpretation is just as important. And so if you're not doing thick interpretation and you're relying on the software, this becomes really problematic that you're just pumping things out. A piece too is the communication, is that a lot of analysis should involve a lot of person-to-person communication. And instead what's happening is that we're seeing a lot of now person-to-computer discussion, that we're just seeing, well, I did my analysis, you did your analysis, the inter-rater reliability says this is what's happening, and that's what's taking place. And so people are really pushing towards inter-rater reliability, and there's less focus on collaboration in the research and discussing the ways in which the researcher is really central, rather than making sure the two researchers who are involved are generating the knowledge. The other piece that's important to think about is its impact on knowledge. And a lot of this idea is about technology via masculine. And we're not being, when I say it's masculine, I'm not talking about man or being anti-male, but this idea of the values that are associated with masculinity is sort of centered in the ways in which this research is done, where it's critical thinking, it's independence, versus the idea of capturing cultural nuances, about building community, and also this lack of context, that everything is black and white. So as a result, the idea is that you're also seeing with a lot of qualitative research, people are like, well, now it's not as hard. I can have 100 participants. And so you're getting people pushing towards larger and larger data sets and more data to be collected, but that's not necessarily what qualitative methods are about. So using this tool is shifting away from what qualitative methods are about. If that's the case, then you should just do quantitative. Is that really aligning with your method or your methodology or your questions? So one of the things that they're talking about is this framework of garbage in and what's it called, and gospel out, in terms of how we think about qualitative research and moving forward. Next is the concept of reification. And what that really is that we start giving the computer or the software the power and the centrality. And it's really that this is where we're going to find our knowledge, and where we're going to give it a lot more validity over who a person is or who we are, that the computer and the program will know more than we do as an individual. And so, especially when it's seen as the only option and computer management, if that's the case, then you can then collect qualitative data and send it to somebody else in another country and they can analyze it, right? But there's this idea that once we have the codes, we can just objectify and then we present frequencies. Oh, this came up this many times and this is what's happening. And it's really missing that nuanced piece. That is what makes qualitative data different from quantitative, not necessarily better again, but different, and helping us give a different lens and understanding of what's happening in our work. And that's what's really critically important for thinking this through. And the quantitative interfaces, which are really great for doing the mixed methods. But again, this interface is now pushing people to come from a quantitative lens and sticking qualitative on top of it. So there's this framing of the data still from a quantitative positionality. And there's still this idea, well, then I can cut quantitative data and stick it on here. And again, this goes back to the issue of people looking at qualitative as this sideline project. And so this goes back to early on why you need to know how to do qualitative data analysis without the software. If you can't do qualitative data analysis without the software, then you shouldn't be using the software or doing even mixed methods. Because again, we couldn't go and do a quantitative dissertation or qualitative study without having some foundational research methods and foundational understandings, or knowing how to calculate things by hand, or understanding certain formulas. So if we can't do it that way, why are we doing that and assuming the software or allowing the software to do it for us? And that's kind of where the position comes from. Other considerations are the idiosyncrasies of the software. It depends on which one you're doing, how much time it takes to do this, and then again, the decontextualization of data. And so these are like sort of the really sort of important factors that you should also think about, and are being debated in doing qualitative research using this QDA software. Then we also have concerns about the etic and emic view about whose positionality is being looked at when we're doing this research. So are we looking at objective or subjective perspective when we're looking at it? And this is one of the things that QDA can start making a shift, particularly when we start just counting on we need the inter-rater reliability. Also, what is the best practice? Sometimes it is manual and computer management, depending on your data and what's happening. And so it's really, I think this is a big piece here, is that you need to be a competent methodologist prior to doing this. I think about this when I look at even earning your PhD. There are PhDs where people just collect data, or they use existing data and they send it out to somebody and then they just discuss it. Is that really, would you count that person as a good researcher? Or do you want someone who collected the data and understand what took place? They took classes and they learned how to analyze their own data. Now, later on, you can send it out, but you need to be able to understand, okay, I caught there, when I sent it out and it comes back, I understand what they did, or I can capture what was done wrong, or how this took place. So this goes back to what is the best practice, and how competent are you as a methodologist to even understand if QDA software is the best thing to do? But again, I'm not trying to turn people off QDA software. I'm just trying to point out what where some of the concerns are moving forward, particularly when people are early in their training. But there are really good things to think about with QDA software. And generally, there are three types of programs that exist. And this is how you kind of want to think about what you're using the software for, and then also which software program is the best. Now, I'm going to present some programs, but remember, depending on when you see this presentation, they're regularly changing the software programs, especially as qualitative data analysis is taken off. So there might be other programs out there, or programs that I'm presenting here might have even exploded and gone further, but this is just sort of to get you going. But the three main things that you can look at for qualitative data analysis software for coding and retrieving, which is the most basic. The second is for theory generation, where it's going to help you actually make the connections for predicting or seeing relationships. And the third is content analysis. We're using large blocks of data, and you want to look at large blocks of what's happening here. That's for like basic quantitative, like basic QDA data analysis software. So systematization, organization, that would be one. So Ethnograph 6, Ethno 2, Super Hype Qual. These are some of the softwares that are really sort of basic, and this is what they mainly do. Again, Max QDA, In Vivo, Atlas, Nudist, all of them also do this, right? But these are three that are free, and this is basically what they do. But again, the others do this as well. But I'm listing the ones here that this is what they basically do at the time of this recording. But again, Max QDA is what I use. It does all of this. I know Nudist, all those Atlas, etc., do it as well. So that's not to say they don't exist. Theory generations, that's a little bit more advanced. And so then again, these are the ones that you see, and these are the ones that will help you visualize your data to help you generate a theory, particularly if you're using grounded theory. So you will be able to have a better chance of seeing the connections and seeing the relationships across your data versus just being able to do the coding. And so this is some theory generation programs. And then the content analysis, again, this is more text, quantifying text. And so you can look at these in terms, they can do word frequencies, category frequencies, keywords in the context. So you can look at individual words within contexts that are described in the data, cluster analysis, or where words pair. So does father keep coming up with communication? Does mother keep coming up with happiness? So you can also look at relationships. So those are what when we're talking about content analysis programs. And again, Max QDA, In Vivo, Atlas, Deduce, these are some of them that do there. They also relate to the content analysis. These programs can also do visualizing data. I should also say, I realize I do already need to update this from when I created this. Max QDA, In Vivo, Atlas, and Deduce also visualize data too. I'm not sure, this doesn't mean ASCIM 6 and the others don't do it. I just know for sure those 4 do. So all these programs are moving ahead that, again, the visualizing data, which is useful for content analysis programs because you're going to have huge amounts of data, qualitative data that you're quantifying. So the visualized programs can really help, particularly when you're doing presentations. And so when we get to presenting qualitative data, this is where you want to think about too, what can your QDA software do? So I'm just going to do a quick comparison of the most popular programs. Again, this has always changed and the data has been changing and things are moving ahead. So don't view this as gospel, but just a jumping off point. So In Vivo is really popular. And one of the things is almost every university offers a free version for students. What does this mean? This means that it's really accessible and it's great for using when you're doing teams. Now, historically, at a steep learning curve, and because also it's online, because that's how it makes it for doing it. There's reports of crashing, time-consuming coding process. Again, don't take this as gospel, but this is one of the things that are useful. But these are some of the pros and cons of In Vivo. Max QDA, similarly, it's got a lot of pros and cons as well. It's more expensive. So Max QDA is not free. It's got fewer users, but that's changing because of it's actually easy to learn. It's got a very intuitive interface. So you're seeing more and more people using it. But again, it's not the most popular like In Vivo because it is so accessible. But it's got a lot of great interface materials and it's got a lot of great visualization and tools that are built into it. Deduce, again, it's fully online. It's useful across whichever platform you want, but there's a lot of other cons. Again, I just want you to look at these as starting off points because somebody might be like, that's not true who's watching this because I use Deduce and I'm able to now do auto coding, etc. But this is as of 2022, this is what the concerns were. So again, what I would do is take these cons and go to their websites and look and see, or even look at reviews and see if it's changed, especially since Deduce is also often free. It's no charge to use. You can charge a monthly access, but when you're not using it, you don't have to. So you could pay as you go. And again, these are really important things to think about. And then Atlas, this is another one that's really often given out free to universities. And so this is great. Again, check these cons to see if they still exist and if these pros still exist on the same way. But Atlas is another popular software. I would say these are the 4 big ones: In Vivo, Max QDA, Deduce, and Atlas for various reasons. And there are others, again, people use. And there's no one perfect way. A lot of it is about what people get access to, what they were trained on, what they need it for. So like when you ask my favorite preferred program, I use Max QDA. And I have the fancy bells and whistles version, but I just use the basic one. So you also want to think, do I really need to use all the fancy things that the other one offers? So think about that. Don't just pick because of the bells and whistles, because you have to think about how long is it going to take me to learn all those bells and whistles, and how long it take me to learn the basics. But I like Max QDA because I can really sort of integrate my coding at different levels. So very early on when I'm doing my initial thinking going forward, if I want to go back, it does a great job for my memoing and creating an audit trail. It has lots of tools I can integrate it now. There's videos, you can code videos on it so that so if I do interviews, for example, via Zoom, I can code non-verbal cues even in there as well directly. I don't have to make notes that the person, was frowning or the person looks sad. I can literally code that right in there. And also now, as of in the last 2 months, which is even long after I created this slide, you can now record your interviews directly in Max QDA and it will automatically transcribe them for you. So these are my preferred program, Max QDA. I will also say that I have grants that can help me pay for Max QDA. Max QDA used to also be like you paid for it, you kept your when you bought your license, it lasted forever. And then if you want to upgrade, now the licenses are like 2 years or 5 years. So you're going to have to keep paying for them. That's as of today when I'm recording this lecture, which is in March 2024. But again, these are all the things that you want to think about, like what do you need to do? What do you have access to? But the fact is, it doesn't matter what one you're using in the program. If you don't know how to do coding or you can conceptualize, it doesn't matter what program you're using. So again, I want to stress that I use qualitative data analysis software, but I caution that I use it as a supportive tool to guide me through my work. It is not my tool of analysis. And that's really what I want to stress with this presentation. Because again, you need to know how to do this work if you're going to be doing qualitative data analysis, and you need to know the role of QDA software in that process.